Imagine waking up one morning and knowing, not guessing, knowing that there's not enough food left to make it to the next harvest. No grocery store, no emergency shipment, no one coming to save you. For most of human history, this wasn't a nightmare scenario. It was a recurring part of life. Famine wasn't rare. So what did people actually do when the food ran out? The answer is stranger, darker, and more resourceful than you'd think. Ancient people didn't get blindsided by famine the way we might assume. They read the signs: failed harvests, migrating game animals, rivers running low. In Central Europe, some communities got so good at tracking drought cycles that they carved warnings directly into stones sitting in riverbeds. When a drought dropped the water level low enough to expose one of these hunger stones, it meant one thing: hardship was coming. One stone on the Elbe River, inscribed centuries ago, carries a simple, chilling message: if you see me, weep. Some of these warnings date back to the 1400s. People weren't just predicting famine for themselves. They were leaving messages for descendants who wouldn't exist for generations. But knowing famine was coming didn't mean you could stop it. When the warning signs turned real, the first move was always rationing, and rationing meant brutal math. Communities had to decide who ate first. In many groups, that meant hunters and laborers. The people whose strength kept everyone else alive got priority over children and the elderly. Some desperate farmers made an even worse trade-off: eating next year's seed grain just to survive this year. It kept people alive in the short term and guaranteed an even worse famine the following season. In ancient Egypt, this cycle played out on a massive scale. The Nile's flood wasn't just a farming resource. It was proof that the pharaoh had divine control over the land. When the flood failed again and again, for nearly 300 years, it didn't just starve people. It shattered the pharaoh's authority completely, and Egypt fractured into competing territories ruled by local strongmen instead of one central government. Farmers got so desperate they started planting crops directly on the exposed, drying sandbanks of the shrinking river. Anywhere there was even a trace of moisture left. A famine wasn't just a food problem, it was a government-ending problem. This is the part people don't talk about enough. What people actually ate when real food ran out: bark, grass, boiled leather. In some regions, people ate clay just to feel full, even though it offered zero nutrition. These weren't recipes. They were last resorts, things the body wasn't built to process, eaten anyway because the alternative was worse. And here's something genuinely strange. Archaeologists studying ancient skeletons for signs of starvation have run into a serious problem. The bone markers that indicate famine, malnutrition, stress lines, stunted growth, look almost identical to the markers left behind by epidemic disease. Which means some ancient famine sites archaeologists have identified over the years might not be famine at all. They might be plague. Two of history's deadliest killers, left wearing the same disguise in the bones. Famine didn't just kill through hunger. It broke the rules that held communities together. Theft became common. Groups abandoned their weakest members. Entire communities migrated into rival territory just to find food, which often triggered raids and violence between neighbors who in better years might have been trading partners. And then there's the part that gets the clicks but deserves real context. Cannibalism. It happened. But it's more complicated than people got hungry enough to eat people. Historians actually separate ancient cannibalism into two very different categories. One is what's called aggressive cannibalism, public acts tied to ritual revenge during uprisings and revolts. The other is survival cannibalism, which only shows up during genuine famine years. Here's the twist. Archaeologists studying a 5,700-year-old cannibalism site in Spain initially assumed it had to be famine-driven. Desperate people, no food, terrible choices. But when they actually analyzed the evidence, the environmental conditions didn't support a famine at all. The likely cause was violent conflict between neighboring farming communities, not hunger. Even more unsettling, this behavior isn't unique to modern humans. Evidence of the exact same butchery-style processing has turned up at Neanderthal sites in France and Spain. Whatever drove this behavior, it's older than our species. Here's the part that connects this to you, right now in a body descended from generations of people who lived through cycles of scarcity. Famine wasn't a one-time event ancient humans got through. It was a recurring pressure that shaped how societies were built, how food was stored, how children were raised, how leaders justified their power, and how neighbors decided whether to trust each other. Some researchers think this deep, repeated exposure to scarcity may have shaped instincts that are still wired into human psychology today. Hoarding behavior, anxiety around food scarcity, even how we react to empty shelves during a random supply panic. Your ancestors' bodies remember famine, even if you never have. Next time you open a fridge that's never actually empty, remember, for almost all of human history, that fridge would have been a miracle.